When you hear the name Confucius, you probably think of a wise old sage, spouting these cryptic little proverbs. But what if the real guy was way more interesting, more relatable, and just more human than the myth? We're going to use his own words from the Analects to find out. Let's dig in and uncover the true teachings of one of history's most important thinkers. So here's our game plan. First, we'll look at how Confucius actually saw himself. Then, we'll dive into his nonstop pursuit of virtue, his pretty revolutionary ideas on teaching, and get a feel for the real personality behind the legend. And we'll wrap up with his thoughts on how to find joy in a simple, meaningful life.
To really get Confucius, you have to start with this question. Who did he think he was? In a time full of prophets and people with grand new visions, he said something that was actually kind of surprising. He wasn't there to invent something new. He was there to save something precious that he felt was being lost. This one sentence, it's the key to his entire philosophy. He saw himself as a channel, a conduit for the wisdom of the past. He truly believed that the answers to the problems of his day weren't in some radical new ideology, but in rediscovering the timeless truths that had come before. But don't make the mistake of thinking transmitting means he was just a copy-paste machine. Oh no. For Confucius, this was a super active, intense process. It meant being passionately fond of antiquity, always hunting for more knowledge. It meant listening to everybody, watching everything, and quietly piecing it all together. This was a man who said he could learn without getting tired and teach without getting worn out. It was a relentless, lifelong mission. And this drive to pass on wisdom wasn't just some academic exercise. It was deeply, deeply personal. So if a guy like this wasn't worried about money or fame or power, what did he worry about? Well, the answer shows us that his biggest battles were all internal. It's a great question, right? What keeps a man like Confucius up at night? His answer tells you everything you need to know about what he valued. So here they are, his 4 great worries. Am I failing to work on my own virtue? Am I failing to really understand what I've learned? When I know what the right thing to do is, am I failing to actually do it? And when I see a flaw in myself, am I failing to fix it? Do you see the pattern? Every single one of these points inward. His whole life was a project of constant self-improvement. I mean, just think about the humility in that statement. He's not old and declaring, I've figured it all out. He's just asking for a little more time to study, to get better, so that maybe he could avoid making big mistakes. For Confucius, wisdom was never a place you arrived at. It was the road you walked every day. Okay, so all this personal drive to learn just naturally spilled over into him being a teacher. And his classroom was, well, it was groundbreaking for its time. But getting in had a very specific price. And believe me, it had nothing to do with money. He basically had an open-door policy. That bundle of dried meat was just a small token of respect, the most basic kind of tuition you could imagine. It was a symbol that anyone, from a prince to a peasant, could come and learn from him, as long as they were serious about it. His classroom wasn't for the elite. It was for anyone who genuinely wanted to be better. But look, just because the door was open, that didn't mean his standards were low. They were incredibly high. He said he would only help a student who was already driven to distraction by a problem. He wanted students who were in a frenzy to try and explain their own ideas. And he used this brilliant analogy. If he showed a student one corner of a square, he expected them to figure out the other 3. He wasn't there to just give you answers. He was there to help ignite a mind that was already trying to catch fire. So we've got the scholar and we've got the teacher. But who was the man? The Analects give us these beautiful, quick little glimpses into his daily life, his character, and they paint a picture of someone who was deeply, deeply human. For instance, you learn about his incredible empathy. The texts tell us that whenever he was eating with someone who was in mourning, he never ate his fill. He would physically share in their grief. It's such a small act, but it speaks volumes, doesn't it?
And his emotions were completely genuine. There was no stiff upper lip for appearances. It says that on a day when he had cried, he wouldn't sing. He just allowed himself to feel what he was feeling. It shows this emotional honesty that really cuts against that image of a stoic, unfeeling sage. So what you end up with is a portrait of profound balance. In his downtime, he was relaxed but still proper. He could be friendly but also firm. He was awe-inspiring but not intimidating. Respectful but totally at ease with himself.
This wasn't some one-dimensional wise man. This was a complete, complex human being.
So, what was the point of it all? This life of learning, teaching, and constant self-improvement. For Confucius, the ultimate prize wasn't power or money. It was something much simpler, and honestly much more profound. It was joy.
This is such a radical idea even for us today. He's saying that real happiness isn't something you buy. It's available right here, right now, in the simplest things. A plain meal, a drink of water, even just using your arm as a pillow. Joy wasn't a product of what you owned. It was a product of how you've lived. And he was absolutely clear about this. All the wealth and status you could get by doing the wrong thing, to him it was completely worthless, as fleeting and insignificant as clouds just drifting by in the sky. His capacity for joy wasn't just about being content, it was also about being completely lost in a moment of beauty. This number, 3, it's for the 3 months after he heard a beautiful piece of ancient music. He was so moved that he said for all that time, he didn't even notice the taste of his food. He could just be totally captivated. And at the absolute center of this joyful life was benevolence, which is really just human decency, kindness. He asked, is this some far-off impossible goal? Not a chance. He said the moment you truly desire it, the moment you decide to be good, to be kind, boom, it's right there with you. It's a choice available to all of us in any second. You know, maybe the best summary of all comes from Confucius himself. Someone asked one of his students to describe him, and Confucius later gave his own version. He said, just tell them this. He's the kind of guy who gets so wrapped up in solving a problem that he forgets to eat, who gets so filled with joy that he forgets his worries, and who is so engaged with life that he doesn't even notice he's getting old.
So, when you strip away all the myths, what you find isn't some dusty figure on a pedestal. You find a passionate, lifelong learner dedicated to becoming a better person, totally convinced that a life of virtue and engagement is the real path to joy. Which leaves us with one last question. Does that sound like a figure from the ancient past or a lesson for right now?